How's it going, everyone? Blade here, and is everyone ready to really feel those nerfs? Well, admittedly I've done my best to try to avoid them here. I put together a list of 4 starters that, with all of my tests, look like they should have zero issue in 3.15. And at the end I'll throw in some honorable mentions. The 4 builds that I'll be focusing on today are Chieftain Cyclone, Lancing Steel Champion, General's Cry Berserker, and Bladefall Blade Blast Assassin. Before anything, I did want to alleviate any concerns that there may be with how I tested these builds with all of the nerfs that we'll soon be seeing. All of these tests, just to be sure to bring it all the way down to the level that we'll be seeing at 3.15, I did mostly with level 1 gems. And any that were further down, I took from other gems to compensate. As you can see here in my Lancing Steel build, I have level 1 of every single support gem that I am currently using. Even though Vicious Projectiles is similar to a level 10 currently, I've brought it down to level 1 just to compensate for any loss that we would have had in addition to the level 1s of these 3 gems. As for my gear, as you can see here, I've chosen Terminus and Lionides because these are extremely common uniques, and everything else are simply rares with a little bit of health and maybe a tiny bit of accuracy or something else on them, just to keep it extremely simple. As for my flasks, almost all of them I may have a silver, and in this case I do have a quartz. I've placed a diamond here, but I do not enable it. Instead, I've put a pseudo new diamond flask on my abyss jewel that is in my belt, just so that we can simulate what exactly we'll be getting from it. I've included some clips of gameplay of how these builds play. Unfortunately, there's no clips of people running around with level 1 gems clearing things, so everything you'll be seeing behind me will be quite a bit more DPS than what is actually available right now. All of these will still have more than enough DPS to clear the endgame, but just don't expect them to do as much damage as a build with double the amount of DPS would. On all of these builds I've taken the time to create starter PoBs with starter trees and items, which I specifically avoided clusters and such. I will include my final PoBs alongside Lancing Steel and General's Cry, and links to good final versions of Cyclone and Blade Blast that I believe are very well made. I wanted to start with Lancing Steel. I league started this build in Ultimatum, and it was one of the best league starts I've ever had. You'll slam around with the two-hander until you can pick up Terminus Est, and then you can switch over to Lancing Steel and it'll feel great. About the time you reach yellow maps, maybe a little bit earlier, you'll want to grab a couple of bell timber blades and switch your tree over to dual wielding, and you'll be good to go for nearly everything. Has great clear, and especially once you get your later gear, its single target is absolutely fantastic. Let's talk about Cyclone next. Pure Cyclone isn't a super common choice for builds anymore, but going that way with Chieftain on a staff really does feel pretty good. I got this idea from Mathel a couple leagues ago when he started it in Ritual, and it was extremely smooth. Swapping in Shockwave for clear feels really nice, and then if you get a Hegemonies when possible, it will give you a really nice DPS increase. I will say, of all the builds I've been setting up, this one's crit chance does feel really nice because those staff nodes are real juicy when it comes to crit. The endgame PoB for this one I'll link over to Mathel's video. Now let's talk about Bladefall Blade Blast. This build didn't get touched. Yes, the poison durations are lowered pretty massively, but they were a little out of hand as it was. The damage of the poison, on the other hand, has actually probably been increased. Between the increased damage to poison itself and the new support gem that looks like it will be pretty awesome exactly for this build, it's probably going to arguably be the best starter out there, as its damage was great before and it will continue to be great. The endgame PoBs on this I'll link you to. The first will be over to Second Cell, his video is pretty good on it. And the second will be over to Zizrin, who has a crazy awesome in-depth guide for this skill. Alright, lastly I want to talk about my personal starter, General's Cry Berserker. I will be using Rage Vortex with it and hoping that it works well, similarly to how Blade Vortex works currently, and if it doesn't, I'll just roll right over to Blade Vortex, which I know works beautifully. Just as a warning, I've not found a way to get PoB to properly measure the DPS when it comes to using Blade Vortex with the setup, so the numbers are going to look real low, but I absolutely assure you that the damage is there. All in all, this build lost very little damage as it uses melee skills, which most were hugely buffed, which makes up for pretty much all of the loss in the damage supports that you would be getting anyway. Playing this build properly with the correct abilities makes the clear feel great. The boss DPS is just simply on another level. A couple of honorable mentions I did want to bring up before we finish are totem, traps, and minion builds. Totem builds did get hit, but not quite as much as most. But traps and minions were actually hit significantly less than pretty much everything else. I will absolutely put chapters below so that if you would like to skip to any particular build, they'll be right there for you. I really do want to reiterate before ending this video that these nerfs are very deep. I did my absolute best to bring into play all of the nerfs that are coming, but there may be unforeseen things that cause additional issues. If you have any questions or problems, please let me know. I stream on Twitch almost every single day, and I answer all my comments here. So, thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, as always, it's a huge help, and have a wonderful league, everyone!